Hello friends, in continuation to our previous classes, today we are going to discuss about transport of gases. Transport of gases. In previous classes we have discussed at length about mechanism of breathing and exchange of gases in respiratory system. Exchange of gases, particularly we have discussed about pulmonary exchange, that means external respiration, and systemic exchange, that means internal respiration. Pulmonary exchange, what happens exactly there? Because of differences in the PO2 and PCO2, that means between alveoli and the pulmonary capillaries, oxygen will get entry into the pulmonary capillaries, whereas carbon dioxide will leave. Whereas in case of systemic exchange, because of the same phenomenon, that means difference in PO2 and PCO2, oxygen will enter the tissue from the systemic capillaries, whereas carbon dioxide exit from the tissues into an entry into the systemic capillaries. That means it's all because of differences in the PO2 and PCO2. That means partial pressure plays an important role in diffusion of gases. So it's all about transport of gases. From lungs, these gases has to transfer to tissues, and from tissues and these again has to transfer to lungs. How? What kind of mechanism involving in transport of gases? Here there is a different mechanism for oxygen and carbon dioxide. That means say transport of oxygen and transport of carbon dioxide. With respect to transport of oxygen, it takes place in two forms or two ways. Say by means of dissolved state, what we call plasma, blood plasma. Nearly 3% of oxygen will be transported in the way of dissolved state, what we call blood plasma. Then by RBC, what we call bounding form, nearly 97%. That means hemoglobin binds with hemoglobin. Okay, hemoglobin. Let's put to carbon dioxide. There are three ways. Around 7% in dissolved state, just like blood plasma. Around 20 to 25% in the way of carb-amino compounds. 70% in the way of bicarbonates. So there is a different transport mechanism for oxygen and carbon dioxide. For oxygen, nearly 3% will be in blood plasma, what we call dissolved state, say physical solution. Whereas great portion, that means nearly 97% will be transferred in the form of bounding form, that means oxyhemoglobin present in RBC. Okay. Regarding carbon dioxide, there are three ways primarily. Nearly 7% in dissolved state, just like in blood plasma. 20 to 25% in the way of carb-amino compounds, for example, carb-amino hemoglobin. Okay. Then 70%, this is very important, in the way of bicarbonates. That means major portion of carbon dioxide will be transferred in the, that means transport in the way of bicarbonate ion, HCO3 minus. Okay. Let we have a look individually how the oxygen and carbon dioxide will transfer from lungs to tissues and or vice versa. First, oxygen transport. As we discussed, as a nominal 3% of oxygen will be transferred in the way of plasma, that means dissolved state, that's it. Whereas the greater portion, around 97%, will be transferred in the way of hemoglobin, that means through RBC, what we call oxyhemoglobin. 97%. How? This is very important. How hemoglobin plays an important role. Actually, hemoglobin is an iron containing red color pigment. It is an amphoteric compound. The peculiarity of hemoglobin is, say for example, if there is a high carbon dioxide concentration, it will bind with carbon dioxide. It means there is a high effluent with carbon dioxide. and leaves oxygen. If there is a high concentration of oxygen, it has affinity with oxygen and leaves carbon dioxide. It's called amphoteric nature, and this amphoteric nature plays an important role in transport of gases, particularly for our survival of life, because we knew that oxygen is transported in the way of oxyhemoglobin. Okay, how? We have already discussed at length partial pressure. Differences in the partial pressure, what we call pressure gradient, plays an important role in transport of gases. For example, say there are two cases, okay? Say oxyhemoglobin, how it ends. Say at lungs, case 1. We have discussed at lungs in previous classes. The partial pressure of oxygen, simply PO2, is around 104 millimeters of mercury. That means, say at lungs, PO2 is 104 millimeters of mercury. Then in pulmonary capillaries, that means pulmonary capillaries, the same PO2 is just 40 mmHg. Therefore, oxygen from alveolus will get into the blood capillary. That means it combines with hemoglobin. Say for example, hemoglobin first 4 oxygen molecules forming oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin. You know how it ends? We knew that one hemoglobin can carry maximum 4 oxygen molecules. Because of differences in the partial pressures, that means in alveoli the partial pressure of oxygen is high. But when compared to pulmonary capillaries, we knew that gases always transfer from high to low. So from lungs, that means alveoli, to the pulmonary capillaries, forming oxyhemoglobin. That means it readily diffuses and binds with hemoglobin, forming oxyhemoglobin. Say maximum 4 oxygen molecules forming oxyhemoglobin molecule. This is one case. So in second case, at tissues, you know what happens. We already discussed. Hemoglobin is an amphoteric compound. If there is high oxygen, it will have greater affinity with oxygen, leave carbon dioxide. If it has high carbon dioxide and greater affinity with carbon dioxide and leave oxygen. The same concept here. At tissues, the partial pressure of oxygen is low, whereas partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high. Why at tissues partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high? Because of catabolism. We knew that, say for example, in glycose, it has been energy releasing mechanism, carbon dioxide will be released out. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 plus 6H2O gives us to 6CO2 plus 12H2O plus 36 ATP. That means 6 carbon dioxide if 1 glucose is oxidized. So this is a regular phenomenon. So that means regular catabolic process. So lot of ample of carbon dioxide will be released at tissue. So because of that, the carbon dioxide, that means the oxygen will readily diffuse. That means it will dissociate from hemoglobin at tissues and enter into the tissues. That means dissociate in the blood capillary, that means systemic capillaries, what we call oxygenated blood. Then enter into the tissues. That because of high PO2 and low PO2 and high PCO2 concentration. At tissues, the same component, say Hb4O2, it dissociates and it goes to tissues. This has to be studied in a calibrated manner by means of oxygen dissociation curve. That means oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, we have to plot a graph for better understanding. Okay, how this happens. The most important, what are the factors we have discussed now? Partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide plays an important role because of hemoglobin amphoteric nature. Difference in PO2 and PCO2 plays a great important role in association and dissociation. And in addition to that, there are certain other factors. Okay, all shall be studied in the way of a graph. What we call oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. What we call oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay. It's nothing but a sigmoid curve. Say this is oxyhemoglobin, what we call percentage of saturation, and this is PO2. That means partial pressure of oxygen in millimeters of mercury. We have to discuss this concept. Say piston how it affects. This is how we have to study. Okay, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, right. The y-axis, then is one, and this is one more. You know, the three kind of plots curves we got it. That means depending on the kind of factors, the curve will come. Say for example, what exactly I meant to say is, say this is normal y-axis. Just imagine in case 1 at lungs, okay, there is high PO2, we knew that, and low H plus concentration, that means high pH, low CO2, low temperature. This is very important. At tissues, just imagine, at one more case, tissues, low pH, that means high H plus concentration, high PCO2, and high temperature. This is very important, very important. We have discussed now. Hemoglobin is the amphoteric compound. Depending on the oxygen tension and carbon dioxide, which gas has high concentration, it will act as an acid or a base. Say at lungs, partial pressure of oxygen is high pH, that means alkaline pH, low PCO2, and low temperature. All these factors facilitates the binding of hemoglobin with oxygen, forming oxyhemoglobin. Say for example, at 100 mm Phe, we will discuss like this. Okay, at 100 mm Hg, that means PO2 that means partial pressure of oxygen at lungs, the oxyhemoglobin saturation, what we call saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen, oxyhemoglobin, okay, is around 97%. Is 97%. The same in case of tissues, because of low pH, that means high H plus concentration, high PCO2, high temperature, the axis shifts away from the y-axis to the right. It depicts that low or less amount of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. What exactly I mean to say is, this is the case with lungs, and in case of tissues, say we knew that the partial pressure of tissue oxygen at tissues is 40 mmHg. 40 mmHg. You know, the percentage saturation of hemoglobin is 75%. This is very strange. At lungs, where the partial pressure of oxygen is high, 100 mmHg in general, it has the percentage saturation of hemoglobin is 97%. Whereas in tissues, where the PO2 is just 40 mmHg, but still the percentage saturation of hemoglobin is 75%. That means nearly 22% of oxygen goes to tissues. That means one fifth of oxygen has been unloaded, whereas the 4/5 has been kept as reserve. 1/5 of oxygen has been unloaded, whereas 4/5 kept as reserve. Unload 1/5. That means around 22%. Why? This is very strange. This is very important. You know, this enables us to survive for 4 to 5 minutes even the heart stops. This around 75% of oxygen is a what we call reserved currency, a reserved form of survival of life. Because for example, skeletal muscle, there is a rigorous exercise. Because of vigorous exercise of skeletal muscle, the oxygen has to regularly transported. For that, this 75% is the source. And if the heart stops and we still the oxyhemoglobin percentage of around 75% is the survival source, at least for 4 to 5 minutes in general. This is what, okay, as per the theory, okay, that means 75% of hemoglobin is a crux point for survival if the heart stops. And we'll take another example. Because of vigorous physical exercise, vigorous physical exercise, where the PO2 is 20 mmHg. You know how much oxygen goes away? Around 62%. Say the percentage of saturation of hemoglobin percentage will be 35%. This is very important. When there is if there is a random demand because of vigorous exercise of biskeletal muscle, there is a pressure, growing pressure on the unloading of this reserve currency. That means reserve oxygen. That leads to, say for example, there is a 20 mmHg at a vigorous skeletal muscle, then it leads to unloading of around 62%. That means 62% oxygen goes off. Here, where the oxyhemoglobin saturation percentage is 35%. So it's all about reserve. That's how the reserve oxyhemoglobin plays an important role. Okay. Then let us come back to this particular point. There is what we call Bohr effect at tissues. It is clear that at tissues there is a high PCO2 because of metabolism and high temperature and low pH. I will tell you why low pH at tissues. Because of this, the hemoglobin dissociates. That means oxyhemoglobin dissociates, so the oxygen can enter the tissues. So this effect on the hemoglobin affinity on the oxygen because of high PCO2 and the high temperature at tissues is called Bohr effect. This has been well calibrated in the way of oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. This is about, this is very important. Okay, this about oxygen. Okay, let's coming back to the carbon dioxide. How the carbon dioxide is transported in 3 different ways. How the carbon dioxide is transported. We have discussed now. The dissolved stage is okay, 7%. We don't need to discuss at length. Just 7%. Whereas the 2 other forms, 20 to 25%. That means carbamino compounds and 70% bicarbonates. This is very important. Carbamino compounds. I told you that already. Just like oxygen binds with hemoglobin, carbon dioxide also binds with hemoglobin, forming carbamino hemoglobin. It is around 20 to 25%. That means apart from hemoglobin, the plasma protein also can bind with carbon dioxide, forming carbamino compounds. So it's like the same concept. Hemoglobin. Say how it is formed. The hemoglobin have a free amino group, NH2. Okay, plus CO2. Gives us to NHCOO minus plus H plus HP and H. This is called carbamino hemoglobin. That means the free amino group of hemoglobin binds with carbon dioxide, forming carbamino hemoglobin, HB, NHCO minus carbamino hemoglobin. In case of plasma protein, the free amino group is very important. In case of plasma protein instead of hemoglobin, there will be a plasma protein. That's it. Okay. In this manner, it will be 20 to 25%. Then come to the bicarbonate. This is very important. That means HCO3 minus. How this is? This is very strange and this is very actually a peculiar phenomenon. How this happens? We knew that at tissues, because of high PCO2 and low PO2, high temperature, the oxygen released from the hemoglobin get into the tissues, and carbon dioxide, because of high concentration, it diffuses from tissues into the systemic capillaries. How it forms? For example, say in tissues, say the tissue, because of high carbon dioxide, it enters and into the blood capillaries. Let me say systemic capillaries. Systemic capillaries. These are RBC. You have to understand this concept. Okay. Say particular this example. And the CO2 diffuse into the blood. That means in the way of both RBC and plasma. What happens? There is an important enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. carbonic anhydrase. What exactly happens? CO2 plus H2O gives rise to H2CO3, carbonic anhydrase. It's a bidirectional enzyme, Then H2CO3 dissociates by means of H plus HCO3 minus. Same carbonic anhydrase. This is very important. This is how carbon dioxide transported and the way of carbonate, that bicarbonate, that means HCO3 minus from tissues to lungs. Just like oxygen from lungs to tissues. This is very important. Okay. From carbon dioxide from tissue, the carbon dioxide diffuses into the blood capillaries, the systemic capillaries, the plasma and the RBC. And here HCO3 is formed in the RBC. Then this is very peculiar phenomenon, what we call chloride shift. Chloride shift. Or Hamburger's phenomenon. Or Hamburger's phenomenon. Or Hamburger's shift. Okay. It is a tissues. In case of lungs, when it reaches to lungs, the same concept. Because of high PO2, low temperature, low PCO2 and high pH, the carbon dioxide, the same reaction in opposite manner, because carbonic anhydrase it takes place in a bidirectional manner. Same concept, that means H plus HCO3 combined, H2CO3, then CO2 plus H2O, CO2 goes off to alveoli. But it is not that simple. And what exactly happening here? What we call chloride shift. This is very important how to learn about this. Chloride shift, now. What exactly happens here? Say, these are the tissues. This is the RBC. Just imagine. This is the RBC. These are tissues, okay? Then this is at lungs. The CO2 will enter and it combines with water, say H2O plus CO2, H2CO3, then H plus HCO3 minus. Here hemoglobin plays an important role. That means hemoglobin means it takes carbon dioxide and also H plus. This is very important. How oxygen dissociates from the hemoglobin because of buffering effect. That means the H plus combines with hemoglobin forming acidic hemoglobin, and the oxygen enters into the tissues. At the tissues, not at lungs, okay, at tissues. And this hemoglobin, it takes up both carbon dioxide and H plus. And this HCO3 minus, which has been formed in the RBC, because higher amount of carbonic anhydrase present in the RBC, minute amount present in the plasma, again diffuse out into the blood plasma. This is RBC, okay? This is RBC, blood plasma. It come out of the blood plasma. To maintain electrical balance, the chloride ions will go inside. That means from blood plasma to RBC. The simple concept. Chloride ions move into the RBC, whereas bicarbonate ions move into the plasma. This exchange of chloride and bicarbonate ions between RBC and plasma is chloride shift or Hamburger's phenomenon or Hamburger's shift. What makes it so? This is very important. This hemoglobin acts as it's a buffering agent. This H plus ion combines the hemoglobin forming HHB. Say for example H plus HCO3 minus plus hemoglobin. Actually hemoglobin is 4 oxygen molecules. We knew that, okay? At tissues, okay, it formed HHB plus HCO3 minus. This is called acidic hemoglobin. At tissues, and oxygen goes into the tissues, okay? Then that means the chloride particularly the entire concept of chloride shift is at the tissues only. The chloride ions get inside the RBC and bicarbonate ions get outside the RBC, then diffuse. At lung, the same concept but different manner. That means, say the bicarbonate ion again enter into the RBC same. Bicarbonate ion enters into the RBC and combine with H plus. Here again, basic hemoglobin. See, H plus plus HC, these this I'm magnifying, okay? HCO3 minus. Here H hemoglobin, it gives off carbon dioxide and H plus and form H2CO3, then carbonic anhydrous, okay? H2O plus CO2, and the CO2 goes off alveoli. At lungs, that's it. That's how the carbon dioxide goes away by chloride shift. At tissues, and the same concept in reverse manner. That means the hemoglobin at lungs, because of difference in PO2, there is high PO2 but has low PCO2. It lost the affinity. That means the hemoglobin lost the affinity with carbon dioxide and bind with oxygen because of amphoteric nature, ultimately forming oxyhemoglobin. Then the same reaction different in opposite manner. H plus HCO3 minus H2CO3 carbonic acid, then that means carbon under the mediation of carbonic anhydrous, just like here, okay? And this again split into H2O plus CO2 and carbon dioxide goes off. This is about the transport of carbon dioxide to lungs. Ultimately, carbon dioxide goes off and oxygen to tissues. Okay. Apart from these, there are certain disorders, respiratory. We knew that regarding neural control. There is a respiratory rhythm center in middle of Lageta and pneumotaxic center in Pons Valley. With respect to disorders, there are certain disorders like emphysema, asthma, chronic bronchitis. They are considered as chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, COPDs. And then with respect to occupational respiratory disorders, there are asbestosis, cytosis because of iron, silicosis, then black lung disease. Okay, it's all about different issues of transport of gases and some certain basic elements of respiratory disorders. Okay, like common share and coding. Okay, thanks for watching.